We are back for the preview show. The great Harry Paul joins me in all of his glory doing his, who is it? Who used to do that? Dusty Rhodes back in the day used to come out with the arms spread out like that, wasn't it, Harry?
I have no fucking idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I just pulled that out of thin air. But yeah, we're back to talk about the latest installment. We're back in the apex for the next UFC installment as Mackenzie Dern takes on Angela Hill in the main event. Edmen Shahbazyan takes on Anthony Hernandez in the co-main event. And we have a couple of other fights sprinkled throughout that we will discuss over the next 45 minutes or so. We're going to do a quick blast through this card, guys. We're only going to cover the UFC this week. We're recording this a little bit earlier in the week too, so if any fights do fall out and stuff like that, we apologize in advance. These things happen. It's out of our control. But let's get into it, Harry. Let's not waste any time. Mackenzie Dern coming in here in the main event slot after a loss to Yan Xiaonan, which is kind of aging a little bit better than it was probably previously, considering the recent achievements of Yan Xiaonan, who's now pretty much sealed the deal as the number one contender. But Mackenzie Dern, who dropped a majority decision to Yan Xiaonan, she comes in here to take on Angela Hill. Herself picked up a good win over Emily Ducote in her last fight. And I mean, Angela Hill fights mean one thing to me, Harry, is that we're probably almost certain that we're going to see a decision here in the main event. What's the excitement? What's the excitement factors for you coming into this fight? What does this main event mean to you and to both fighters? And what's the big story that you have coming into this fight, in your opinion?
Well, I think the main story coming in is that this is the rebuild for Mackenzie Dern, right? This is the chance to have a nice enough matchup, right? Angela Hill has been working with Justin Flores, the sort of recently to fame judo coach that a lot of the sport grapplers and now MMA fighters are using. And so we know that some of her judo-based, grappling-based, like interesting throw-type wrestling game has upped a little. For Mackenzie Dern, obviously, we know that there's world-class grappling and whatever. But we saw against Yan Xiaonan that, pulling guard and looking for De La Riva is not the way to go in MMA. The excitement factor for the fight itself isn't great, to be honest, because if Angela Hill wins and looks good winning, she's going to need a couple more before a title shot. Mackenzie Dern will at least need one more after this for a title shot. And so that's not really what I'd be using a main event of a fight night card for. I understand that these fight night cards have to be filled by somebody. But in terms of the fight itself, I'm sure there will be interesting back and forths. Mackenzie Dern certainly likes to go forward, and while she may not be the most technical in the striking realm, she certainly looks to close the distance, and to close the distance, she almost barrels into the clinch at times. And she's got a fantastic coach behind her in Jason Perillo, who we've seen work wonders with fighters before in cleaning up their striking, and that takes time. So I'm excited to see what improvements she has made. But from a Jeopardy perspective, this isn't something that's having me mouth-wateringly excited.
No, this fight was actually supposed to take place last week, and it got moved up into the headline spot in the UFC Apex fight. And it's a UFC Apex style main event, to be honest, really, isn't it? It's the kind of fights that we have been seeing taking place in the compound in Las Vegas. Stylistically, the way both of these fighters match up, I think, I don't think that we are going to find too much out about Mackenzie Dern and how good and developed her striking is, with the kind of problems that Angie Hill is going to give to her. Angie Hill has shown some more well-roundedness, obviously known for her striking throughout her career, but in later fights has the ability to kind of keep fights on the feet if she wants to, and she's going to have to do that here. You would imagine that she's coming into this fight with the thoughts that if she can kind of dominate the clinch, if she can keep the fight on the feet, you would think Angie Hill will be coming in thinking that she is going to get the better of the exchanges. But more of the questions are surrounding Mackenzie Dern, and the problem is, and we kind of talked about it last week with Jaelton Almeida, is that what we want to see is what happens when Mackenzie Dern can't initiate her grappling. You know, that we know that that's what Mackenzie Dern wants to do. And will Angie Hill kind of provide those problems for her? I'm honestly not sure, Harry. I'm not sure. I think that Mackenzie Dern is good enough to get the fight down if she wants. I think Angie is good enough to kind of survive on the ground, but I mean, I don't know whether this is the kind of it's a level of opponent really for me and for Mackenzie Dern that gets her back on the horse, gives her a good chance of getting a win, maybe getting the fight down, maybe getting a submission. But you know, I'm not looking at either one of these two fighters, to be honest, thinking that they're going to cause any great problems, especially Angie Hill at 38 years of age. Time is a ticking for her. And with Mackenzie Dern, I mean, you know, she does have time, but I've not seen any great improvements in her striking, even though she is working with Jason Perillo. And there's only so much that Perillo can do at the same time as well. Would you be along the same lines of thinking of that, Harry, or what's your thoughts on the development of Mackenzie Dern and her overall game? Because that's what she's going to have to develop if she has to get to the very, very top.
Yeah, so I don't think she's getting to the very top. Just to piggyback on some of the comments you made just a second ago, I think the opposite, actually. I think Angela Hill will watch the Yan Xiaonan fight and say, well, I already know what happens if Mackenzie Dern doesn't get the takedown. And it's not pretty, like, you know, she reverts back to who she is at the core of her being, and she's going to pull guard, do De La Riva, get hit a lot, and whatever. Angie Hill, coming from the Muay Thai background, I do think that she has some interesting questions to ask Mackenzie Dern. If they get into clinch situations, there's going to be plum clinches, there'll be knees, there'll be elbow attempts, there will be trips, there will be opportunities for Angie Hill to look good here. We know that there are times when Angie Hill just doesn't do enough in rounds, just doesn't put her foot on the gas enough. I don't think that's going to be a problem here, simply because Mackenzie Dern will be walking her down and will be looking for those clinch situations and those grappling situations. So if Angie Hill is prepared and has the gas tank, then I think she can look good in this fight. But I think if it gets to the mat, we're done here. Like Mackenzie Dern is a elite level submission grappler, and yeah, I mean, I would not be shocked if this does go to the mat, that Mackenzie Dern gets the sub. But I think getting it to the mat will be more difficult than it has in previous contests. But like you say, neither of these women are winning a title for sure.
Yeah, I would have to agree as well. And it kind of takes a little bit of the shine off the main event. I mean, that when we're talking about main events, you know, we had Jailton Almeida and Rosenstruck, who was an all right main event, but we had that excitement in the wonder and how good Almeida would look. And we still have that wonder after the fight and how far he can go. But I think, like, my mind has certainly been made up about both of these women. I mean, you know, fantastic athletes and everything like that, but you need that X factor really to get up to the top of the division. And look, I think Angie's time has kind of come and gone at this stage where, you know, fair play to her, she's still up there and competing against top level opponents at this late stage in her career. And you have to give her credit for that. But I mean, I think the fact that this is over 5 rounds definitely plays into Mackenzie Dern's hands and giving her the opportunity to, you know, even if she can't get the fight down early, I'm sure there will be more opportunities later on in the fight for her to do that. And I agree with you as well, along the lines of the fact that if the fight does get down, I think it's going to be a world of trouble for Angie Hill as well. And is it a thing? Do you see a finish in this fight? Do you see it going all 5 rounds? It's basically boiling down to that one factor, as if Mackenzie Dern can get the fight down, and what she does when the fight does go down, it'll probably define whether it's over early or whether it goes all the way. Hey,
yeah, I don't know that I necessarily see a finish. You know, Angie Hill's not a big finisher on the feet. Mackenzie Dern is super tough, can take a ton of damage on the feet. And so I don't think we're going to see a knockout or a submission from Angela Hill. I could be wrong, right? We could see, and we've said this before, chins don't last forever, and Mackenzie Dern in her UFC tenure has certainly taken some shots. And so, yeah, I don't see that. But if Mackenzie Dern gets the fight down once and controls Angela Hill for a significant period of time, I can see her getting it down again. And the longer that you're on the ground with somebody like Mackenzie Dern, the far higher the probability of you getting submitted is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Edmen Shahbazyan will step into the co-main event, Harry, against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I guess the story of this fight as well is the development of Edmen Shahbazyan, who went out there and picked up his first win in a couple of years, really, against Dalcilan Bangula, with a wonderful finish, it has to be said. So, I mean, the kind of level of competition that we're still dealing with Shahbazyan right now, while he's still trying to grow his ceiling, still trying to develop his skills and find his way. I think this is another fair matchup with Anthony Hernandez, which is not going to be easy. I've been really impressed with Anthony Hernandez and his finishing ability. Obviously, he's won his last 3 in a row. That win where he became Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion against Rodolfo Vieira. Another, I love saying it. I love saying it. Josh Fremd picked up a good unanimous decision as well, and then picked up another lovely submission win against Marc-Andre Barrel in his last fight as well. And this is an interesting fight between two up-and-coming prospects. Even though Shahbazyan has been in and around the UFC for quite some time, has fought some high-level competition, I look at this as a rebuilding phase of his career. The fight itself, it is intriguing to me because I see two good young prospects with a chance to take the next step here. How do you see this fight and the two guys that are fighting in it, in Shahbazyan and Hernandez?
So I really like the matchmaking. And I like the matchmaking because for Edmen Shahbazyan, it's not a second coming of thrown to the wolves, right? With Fluffy Hernandez, though, it's sort of an opportunity for legitimacy, because in the fight against Rodolfo Vieira, it was short notice, right? He goes out, gets trucked around a little bit, and then pulls off the upset. And everyone's like, wait, who the fuck is this kid with this crazy tattoo on his chest? And it was sort of a meme, right? He became a sort of a meme, as you've sort of said, that, he becomes Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion because he beats Rodolfo Vieira and whatever. The Josh Fremd isn't a great fighter, but Fluffy Hernandez did what he needed to do in that fight. But the win over Marc-Andre Barrel is like a step towards legitimacy. Barrio's been in the division a fair whack of time, got some good wins, taken a couple of losses. And so the fight against Shahbazyan is like, well, Shahbazyan's fought some really good names, right? And okay, he's taken some losses, but he's fought some names. He's got some value. People know him. And if Fluffy Hernandez goes out and beats or submits Edmen Shahbazyan, well, that's a big stake to legitimacy. And then you start to rewrite the narrative of that meme, right? You start to rewrite the narrative. No, actually, I'm not just a guy that can beat Rodolfo Vieira and submit him. I'm a guy that can actually fight and can actually be something interesting in this division. And for Shahbazyan, you're kind of coming in against a guy that names under the radar, but you know that he's got some skills. He's got some nice wins under his belt, and you're building yourself back up too. You're getting back on the horse. You're finding your feet in there. And his last performance was a solid one, right? He went out and he got the dub and he got himself back on the horse. And Dalcilan Bangula, as we've said, is an absolute monstrous human.
He's a beast. He's beast.
Insane. The best thighs in MMA. I'm sorry, Benson Henderson, have been bested. The best thighs in MMA. And the way that he did it was wonderful. The flying knee was timed perfectly. And look, if I'm Edmen Shahbazyan, I am taking all of these slow roll fights I need. How old is he? He's still 25.
25. He's so young.
We're talking about Ian Gary, right? Taking a slow roll and doing the right thing and taking these types of fights. Ian Gary hasn't fought Nassourdine Mamavov, Derek Brunson, Brad Tavares, Jack Marshman, or maybe he's fought Jack Marshman types, but Nassourdine Mamavov, he hasn't dealt with any of this sort of fighter yet. And so if I'm Edmen Shahbazyan, I'm taking the rebuild, I'm going out, I'm putting a beating on Fluffy Hernandez, and I'm calling out somebody of exactly the same level.
Absolutely. I think a big talk around Shahbazyan's kind of career progression came with a move to Extreme Couture. It came with a move over to work with Eric Nixick and the great team over there in Las Vegas, and getting that work in with a team of guys seems to have benefited him. And we're kind of seeing a little bit of a turnaround, but it's also the mental game as well, Harry, like going in there as such a young man against top level competition. and having things going your way. Look, when you're 22, 23, 24 years of age, you're coming in to that fight against Lambian Bula, and you have lost your last 3 in a row. So that can be kind of soul crushing in certain ways, in that you are this young and up and coming prospect, and then you were put in there against the, pretty good competition in the middleweight division. Yeah, you lose them, but it's a battle that you'll probably have with yourself. But he had to do a bit of soul searching, and the decision was eventually made to move over to Team Extreme Couture, and I think that's a good move for him. And I think we've seen some positive signs in his last fight as well, surrounding that.
I agree. And I think, whilst I understand the loyalty and the this and the that and the whatever, and you were with Tarvarian for a long time, and there was the allure of the Ronda camp, and he was the kid, and that Ronda was drilling on and all this stuff. I get all that, but now you're a man. Like, now you've got to go out and you've got to build your own career. Now you've got to go out and think about what's best for you. We've learned in the Nasilim Mamavov fight, we learned in the Jack Hermanson fight, we learned in the Derek Brunson fight. This game is a selfish game. And if you go out and you don't try to maximize your own potential, and you don't try to maximize everything that's available for you, the game will swallow you up with it in a heartbeat. And so I think going out to Nixick, he's got some bigger guys there. He's obviously trained with the likes of Francis Ngannou. He's got guys around the gym that have been in situations he has been in. He is still young. He is still very much moldable. He seems very coachable from the improvements we saw in the last fight. And so it's a perfect move for him. Maybe we see him go to another place and get some more work in some other places. I think this is something that fighters don't do enough, is sort of trade places, go and get looks in from different coaches, go and see Saif Sayoud, go and see Trevor Whitman, go and see Jason Perillo, go and see Ray Longo, like go and see all of these different coaches and get looks on who you are. Because this, as I say, this stuff about loyalty to coaches and loyalty to teams, I understand it. And I think there's merit to it. But at the end of the day, it's only you in there getting punched in the face on fight night.
It absolutely is. And I mean, for Fluffy Hernandez, look, he can, like you said, take all of the hype that Shahbazyan has, because Shahbazyan is a name that you will recognize now. He's been around, as has Fluffy Hernandez as well. When I look at these two from a stylistic point of view, Harry, I probably give the slight advantage to Shahbazyan on the feet. And I would imagine if he can keep this fight on the feet, that he will probably get off his shots. I think Hernandez, he can handle himself on the feet, but I think he gets a little bit wild at times. And I don't think he's going to be able to afford that against someone like Edmen Shahbazyan, who when he's on, can put you out, can turn your lights off inside the cage. Is that the way you kind of see these two kind of stylistically matching up?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think Edmen Shahbazyan's range is a big factor here. I don't know exactly the inch differences, but Shahbazyan has a really long leg reach and can use it pretty well. Now, of course, we have to time those and we have to set those kicks up properly. Otherwise, we might find ourselves on our back. And obviously, that's Fluffy Hernandez territory. But I think for Edmen Shahbazyan, we just stay on the outside, use our range, use our length, drop some shots on him, start to wear him down slowly, attack the lower legs, and then let's see how the fight progresses.
Indeed. I had a problem with my mic there. Sorry, excuse me. Indeed, it will be interesting to see. I'm interested in that. I'm almost interested in that co-main event, nearly more so than the main event. But we shall move on down the card. We're going to whip through a couple of these fights now. Next on tap, catch weight 120 pounds. Emily Ducote versus Lupitina Godinez. We mentioned Ducote. She was in there last time out against Angie Hill. Didn't go her way. She dropped a decision in that fight, looking to get back into the win column against Lupitina Godinez, who had a good win against Cynthia Calvillo in her last fight, split decision. With Lupitina, it's like I feel there's a good fighter in there that we haven't quite fully seen yet, Harry, isn't it? It's like, I mean, I think she could have performed better against Cynthia Calvillo. I think she took that fight at short notice, that being said. But, I mean, you should be going out there and doing a little bit better. I think with Cynthia Calvillo, I feel that she's somewhat checked out maybe a little bit. And I wonder why she's still fighting and stuff like that. But still a difficult enough challenge. But I guess it's better to go out there and win a split decision than lose a split decision. But she'll be looking to perform a little bit better, and will probably need to perform a little bit better against Emily Ducote here. What's your thoughts?
I think you're being far too nice. Like, I think that the performance for Lupe Godinez against Cynthia Calvillo was horrendous. Cynthia Calvillo is known as being a fighter that doesn't like getting taken down, will say that she grapples but doesn't really, and does fine when she's inside boxing range. Lupe Godinez has wrestled since she was a child. Her whole family have wrestled. So she's quite clearly the better grappler, but chose for 3 rounds to stand in the pocket and fuck around. And okay, she wins a split decision, but there's massive question marks about the fight IQ now. And against Emily Ducote, I need to see a far better fight IQ performance. I need to see a better game plan, and I need to see that she can stick to that game plan. Because, okay, Emily Ducote, I'm not expecting her to win a title. I'm not expecting her to see her even in title contention. But for Lupe Godinez, I am asking those questions because we've seen performances where she shows that grappling and she shows the ability to transition between striking and grappling really, really, really well. And okay, well, I'm not saying she's championship level right now. I'm saying there's a ton of work to go, but we've seen some potential. But you go out against Calvillo and you look as poor as that against a fighter who you should be performing so much better than, and it raises big questions. So for me, this fight is, and I hate to say it because I keep saying it and I'm stealing Shawnee's line, this is an IQ test. If Lupe Godinez goes out and wants to stand and bang with Emily Ducote and doesn't try to mix in any grappling, or when she does do, it's desperation grappling, we have big problems.
Yeah, we certainly do. And when we're looking at fighters, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for, if we're saying that it was a disappointing performance, she's going to look back at it and she's going to be disappointed in that performance too. So she can put that performance in the rear view mirror. Yeah, she got the win. That could have been disastrous. I think it would have been disastrous for her to go out there and lose a split decision to Calvillo, who herself hasn't been riding the crest of a wave. But I think this is another winnable fight for Lupitina Godinez. They're putting her in position where, in winnable fights, she's not being thrown to the wolves. I think that she has a chance here to come out and this can be a breakout performance. And I think that's one thing that we haven't seen with Lupitina yet. We haven't seen that breakout performance. And I feel that it's there. We need to see it though. I'm excited to see how she picked up and how she's responded. We haven't heard her talk about that last fight yet. We will this week. I'm excited to see what her attitude is, because in there is a title contender. I'm not too sure how far I would pit her against the guy, everyone at the top of the 115-pound division. I think it's a tough route up there, but I feel that with Lupitina, there is a good fighter in there, and she's just waiting to break out. But it'll be interesting to see if she can do that against Ducote at a catchweight 120. That was the third fight on the main card as we move down to Andrea Fialho versus Joaquin Buckley. A very, very intriguing fight. Early days watching Andrea Fialho, I think there's a good fighter there too. And the trend that he has had in his fights is that he's only good for maybe 5 to 6 minutes before he falls flat with his cardio. And that's where he's been found out in previous fights. I like his footwork. I like his forward movement. But I mean, if you cannot maintain that over the course of 3 rounds, Harry, and especially against a guy like Joaquin Buckley, he's going to find himself in some more trouble in this fight as well, really, isn't he?
He is. I think this is great matchmaking for both fighters. Obviously, Fialho burst onto the scene, Dana White's favorite fucking fighter and all this bollocks, because he'll turn around and fight whoever, whenever, and got big power and does whatever. But as we've talked about, you can't compete at that clip forever. You just can't. And in against Joaquin Buckley, who hits really hard, but isn't the best fighter in the world, will stand and bang. I don't think Fialho is going to be looking and worrying too much about defending takedowns. Buckley may turn something in, but I can't see too much of it. And Buckley is a guy that doesn't throw a huge amount of shots because of the muscle-bound nature and because of his willingness to throw with power. And so Fialho can use the forward pressure, sort of L-shaped stance that he has to walk Buckley down, find Buckley's back against the fence, and counter him when he looks to strike big. Obviously, Buckley is a dangerous fighter, I don't think that he is coming in here too worried about being taken down by Fialho either. And so I think we're largely going to see a striking battle, but I would be remiss if I was Buckley's corner to not say, just try and take this dude down and let's just see what happens, because we know that he struggles after 5. We know, and we have seen in fights previously, that you can get to him when he's tired. And so let's try and tire him out. Let's try and follow the blueprint, right? So that would be my call on this. But for both guys, a win against Andre Fialho for Joaquin Buckley is a really good win. And obviously, Joaquin Buckley got that viral knockout of Impa Kasanganay, and the world saw it. And so Andre Fialho can build off that. We know that the VT is going to be full of that knockout from Impa Kasanganay. And so, yeah, I mean, a fun fight.
This is a fun fight. Look, you're looking at Joaquin Buckley, and he's lost these last 2 to Imamov and Chris Curtis. But I mean, that's, that was a step up in competition. I feel this is a step back down. It's a very well matched fight, and I think it's a huge one for Fialho as well, who did kind of come in with great hype, but he's got some good wins. Don't get me wrong, but not one that really rubber stamps him as a good, legitimate kind of fighter outside of the top 15. I think he's maybe, this is a good chance for him to come in here against a name, but I'm kind of leaning towards Joaquin Buckley in this fight, simply based off what we've seen. To be honest, I think if Joaquin Buckley comes in here and plays the patient game and doesn't fall into the trap of getting caught up in the exchanges, because I do believe Fialho is very, very dangerous, but he's a 5-minute fighter. And, we kind of likened him to the forward movement and the footwork of McGregor, who's almost can be known as a 5-minute fighter as well. So, and I think it's the cardio issues of Fialho. Do you think it's something that can be worked on at this stage of his career, or is it just a flaw that people are going to have to be? Like, I think when it comes to strength and conditioning, more so if it was other kind of technical flaws in his game, I think strength and conditioning can be worked on no matter where you're at the stage of your career as well. And I'm interested to see. I don't think it's a good idea for him to be taking all of these fights at short notice. I think that was a mistake. Yeah, you're getting paid, but now you're looking at a guy who's now 2-3 in his last 5 in Fialho. And this is a big, big fight. He could be basically fighting for his job here on Saturday night, and the pressure will be on. I kind of fancy Buckley. How are you feeling about the result of the fight?
That's really interesting. You know what? As this is going to sound fucking stupid, but I've not even thought who I think will win it. Like, I don't think that Dana White cuts Fialho. I think because Fialho gave him whatever he gave him in the last little while. There's been 7 months now, 7 months from his last fight. And so nice break, right? Nice time away. Fine. Almost 7 months to the day from his last fight. And so time to recover, time to enjoy himself. Obviously, he's got 5 paydays in the UFC, and now we're here. Can you work on the striking? On the cardio? Absolutely, you can. Absolutely, you can. There is MMA specific strength and conditioning programs out there. There is just fucking straight road work. There is swimming. There are lots of ways to improve aerobic and anaerobic cardio without a shadow of a doubt. And I find it very difficult to think that a fighter and an athlete of this level of capability, as in making it to the UFC and being successful in fights in the UFC, especially being successful in fights against guys like Baeza and Pereira. Frankly, he was very successful in that first round. I find it very difficult to see that you can't improve or have the capability to improve your cardio over that time. Now, for the final part of your question of who I think wins, Jesus, I don't even know. Like, I think the more well-rounded fighter is Joaquin Buckley, and I think he holds more like just dumb explosive power in his hands. But we see if Fialho can make Buckley worried in those first 5 minutes and land some damage and make him tactically aware of some of the weapons that Fialho has, he can absolutely win the fight. Absolutely. But like I said, I think Fialho, at least the Fialho we saw against Matthews and Salikov, is an easy enough fighter to game plan against, you know?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Intriguing fight there. in the 175-pound division. Michael Johnson versus Diego Ferreira is next on tap, and it's a kind of a fun fight that I'm looking forward to here. I mean, Diego Ferreira and Michael Johnson, they always bring the heat, man. They're always looking to move forward, always looking to kind of, they're fighters who will fight to win and not just fight to finish, and not just fight to win. And I think that's going to provide the ingredients for a very exciting fight here in the lightweight division. Diego Ferreira not having the best run of luck at the minute coming into this fight, having lost his last three, but that last three was against Benny Dariush. It was against Gregor Gillespie, who's completely forgotten about at this stage. That's a name I haven't seen in a long time. And Mateus Gamrot, he lost in his last fight. But Michael Johnson coming in here off a really, really impressive performance against Mark Giacchesi in his last fight just proved he's still there. He's still knocking around, and he can still win fights at this stage in his career. And this is kind of a battle between old, like, chiseled veterans in the lightweight division. And I'm excited to see how it goes down. There's a lot at stake here for both fighters. Maybe not any jeopardy in towards, say, making a run at a top 15 or any shit like that. Both of these guys have passed that sell-by date. But more so, there's a lot of pride at stake. Neither one of these guys is going to want to go out and lose. And more so for Diego Ferreira, he can't afford really another loss at this stage of his career. I think Johnson saved himself against Giacchesi. He might have been in a predicament if he had lost that fight, but produced a fantastic performance, as I said. What's your kind of overarching outlook on this fight, Harry? Kind of a slow burner. Sorry. Kind of my under the radar fight that I'm most looking forward to on this main card, to be honest.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I love this fight. It's a fucking brilliant fight. Diego Ferreira is never in a boring fight. A split decision against Benil Dariush is a loss that's aged significantly well. It was a fantastic fight. Really, really fun grappling back and forth. Okay, you go out and lose to Gamrot. Fine. What are you going to do? These things happen in fucking MMA. You know what I mean? These things happen. And so at 38 years of age, I agree with you that he absolutely needs to win this fight. But this to me is Alex Morono versus Tim Means, right? Two guys who are sub 30, plus 35, both near the tail end of their careers. And yet they've both got things to offer. I wouldn't like to see a Diego Ferreira versus an Arman Tsarukyan type of matchup. I don't need to see that. But if you want to offer me a Michael Johnson who displayed a fantastic performance against an uber athlete in Mark Diacchese in his last one, I'm here for that. I got no problem with that whatsoever. Like for a long time, we've talked about whether there's room for like a Legends League or a Veterans League or whatever it is, and I have no problem in having these sorts of mini matchups between guys of this ilk and this age. You're never seeing either of them fight for a title, right? Neither of them are going to break the top 5 in this division. I don't want to see any next to any young, up-and-coming, hungry warrior. But if you want to offer me this type of fight, where Diego Ferreira is going to do some scrambly things, he's going to throw some wild hooks, Michael Johnson's got a slick jab, he can move well, his feet work well. If we can see some of that, and I can see some melded chaos, sign me all the way up. I absolutely have no problem for it. But as you've said, and I'll reiterate that point, this might be Diego Ferreira's last fight, because if he loses this, he's turned 38 4 months ago, will be 39 in, by the time he probably gets another fight. And that's not the age of fighting you want to be doing at lightweight,
Definitely isn't. Definitely isn't. And I agree with you 100%. And you have to give UFC the credit for making up this match. The same goes for Tim Means and Morono. And the same goes for Matt Brown and Court McGee, even more so. Like, we don't need to be throwing these guys to the young killers of the division. I think this is very excellent matchmaking by the UFC and a fight that probably has a fight of the night bonus. If this fight goes all the way and these guys fight the way they normally do, we're going to be in for a very entertaining fight, and these guys will be hungry for a bonus as well. Slavikoz Vlashev Borshev, murdered his first name there, but Slavikoz takes on Machete in the lightweight division. And this is kind of another interesting fight as well between two guys who are more than happy to kind of stand and bang as well, Harry. This will kind of feed into the last fight on the prelims card. Slavikoz came in, had lots of excitement, has shown some holes in his game. Lost his last two to Giacchesi and Mike Davis. big one for him coming in. You know, obviously we were waxing lyrical about him after that knockout win and Chris Duncan, and then taking out Dakota Bush with the liver shot. Hasn't had his run of luck lately. Machete had kind of coming in here. He was defeated by Rafa Garcia in his last fight. So two guys hungry coming back to get into the win column here, and one of them is going to get that chance.
Yeah, Borshev is a really interesting conundrum to me, really, because Mahasha Tate is not a great fighter. Like, yeah, he'll stand and bang a bit and he'll do some stuff, fine. But the high that we had with Borshev when he finished, it was Chris Duncan he finished, right?
Was, yeah.
On the series, yeah. The high that he came off of that Contender Series win was just insatiable. Like, so many people were talking about him on the European scene, and obviously, okay, it's not gone his way, and there's been some, he's had some tough matchups, fine, whatever. But this is a great matchup for him in that there is going to be standing and banging, and if that's where that's where he thinks he wants to be, that's where he says he wants to be, that's how he fights. And so if we're looking to get him over the barrel a little and get him a win here, I think this is an interesting matchup for him. But if not, like, I mean, we may see him have to go out and find another run, But yeah, it's a weird one. Borshev was a weird one.
Yeah, it is, because we started on such a high with them, and then that's where things can quickly turn inside the UFC. But I think I agree with you, and this is a good stylistic matchup for him, and should be some exciting exchanges on the feet as well. It'll be interesting to see how that goes down. Next, we'll talk about Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She takes on Vanessa Demopoulos in the strawweight division. And it's been a bit of a resurgence for Karolina coming into this fight. Obviously, a former title challenger, went on a bit of a horrendous run, and she had lots of problems outside the cage as well. Gladly, she's doing okay outside of the cage now, it seems, and she's been producing good performances inside the cage as well. And another good kind of a well-matched fight here as well against Vanessa, really, isn't it, Harry?
Yeah, it is. Like, this is sort of a Kowalkiewicz almost on like a farewell run, kind of. How old is she? She's 37 or something. Yeah, she's 37 exactly. Jesus, that was pretty good fucking memory.
Yeah, nice one there, son.
but Vanessa Demopoulos is not a great fighter, right? Not a great fighter at all. She has some submissions in her back pocket if she's forced to. She certainly is not UFC caliber in my opinion. And like, I know that's mad saying that she's on a 3-fight win streak, but I don't think she's a great fighter. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, in any of her fights when she was competitive against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, absolutely destroys Vanessa Demopoulos. And I was very, very happy to see Kowalkiewicz turn herself around after the first couple of losses of her second return to the, not that she was cut from the UFC, but you know what I mean, on a return to the UFC. I suspect Kowalkiewicz dominates this fight. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a stoppage from Kowalkiewicz in this fight. But look, Demopoulos is dangerous. She's a sniper with some of her submissions, and so maybe she's got a shot, but she's not a great fighter.
I think sometime sooner rather than later for Karolina, the fairy tale will come to an end. I'm just glad it didn't come off the back of that losing streak. I think she was a much better fighter than that streak showed. And I'm glad that she has somewhat of a resurgence. And I do agree with you. This is a very winnable fight for her as well. And it'll be interesting to see how she handles it. But we shall move on, Harry. We'll rush through it. Orion Kosuke takes on Gilbert Urbina in the welterweight division. Urbina coming in here, having lost the Brian Battle. I think he's one of the tough contestants coming in off the last fight. Orion Kosuke coming in after a win against Blood Diamond by unanimous decision here. I mean, yeah, it's just a fight between two welterweight fighters on the prelims of the UFC. There's not too much to talk about when it comes to this. Any thoughts on this, or shall we move on to Latifi? Let's move on. Igor Latifi versus Rodrigo Nascimento. I like Igor Latifi. He's been there. I think the move up to the heavyweight division has been the right move. He gets himself into these kind of fights. I think this fight has been scheduled twice or maybe 3 times in the past and has fallen out one way or other. It finds its way onto the prelims of this card. And I mean, yeah, this has some of the ingredients to be an interesting fight in the heavyweight division. I think neither of these guys going to make too much of a run up in the division. Nascimento, obviously at 9-1 now, has a little bit of time. Either Latifi getting towards the twilight stages of his career. I would imagine, look, coming off that Tanner Boser win from Nascimento, decent split decision win. I think UFC are likely just throwing him in here with the name to try and get a win against Latifi and maybe try and catapult him up into the maybe top 15 of the heavyweight division and introduce some fresh blood into that much needed. The heavyweight division outside of the top 5 or 6 ain't great at the minute, and it's crying out for contenders. And I really think if Nascimento comes in here, gets a good win against Latifi, he might be the next in line to kind of jump in and kind of progress into the top 15. But Latifi, even at this stage of his career, Harry, is not going to be an easy out.
I just question where Latifi is. Like, he fights the last fight, hides a staph infection, which is fucking insane, by the way. Hides a staph infection, fights anyway, manages to get the win against Alexei Oleinik, retires in the cage, and then fucking 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, he's like, sure. Sean was right, MMA retirements. And here I am. And so, I don't know, mate. I don't know. It's so hard to say. Like, what's he been doing since the quote unquote retirement, right? Has he been training? Has he been fucking around? Has he been eating? What's he been doing? I just don't know. Like, this fight to me is an I don't know fight. If Latifi has been training and maybe just wanted to take a little bit of a rest and was feeling a bit fatigued with the MMA game and obviously age isn't on his side and whatever, fine. He just wanted to, fade into the background of those training photos, right? And just be a guy that's a training partner and is there to keep his weight down and just enjoy it and enjoy the process. And then he's like, fuck it, I'll take a fight. If that's it, fine. I'll be interested to see what he's offering. Right. But if this is he's sat at home, bored out of his fucking tree because there's nothing to do, and he's like, well, I guess I'll just take a fight then, anything could happen. I just don't.
Yeah, anything could happen. I don't think I have anything too much to add to that as well. An interesting fight. Like I said, Nascimento has the chance to break up as a contender. Only 30 years of age in the heavyweight division. That's relatively young. But yeah, where's either Latifi at? We shall see. We'll see on Saturday night. Look at Chase Hooper, man. This Chase Hooper experiment. I don't know how many more times I can go in and watch this kid kind of go in there and get absolutely destroyed on the feet. He comes in here against Nick Fiore. Like, what's your opinion on Chase Hooper and his status inside the one? He's moved up to 155 pounds now, and I'm just think he's just not there, Harry, man. And I don't think he's ever going to get there. And it's like, are we going to play this game, or how long are we going to play this game with Chase Hooper, and where we're going to send him in here where he's just too one-dimensional? He wants to take the fight down. He's not showing any improvements on the feet and ultimately taking a lot of damage for a young man. And it's kind of sad to watch in certain ways, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that this is where not even necessarily the UFC, but a commission or a UFC or somebody, and I mean body is like an organizational body rather than body as in a human body. Like, an organizational body has to put an arm around Chase Hooper and be like, dude, this isn't the time. Like, we're too deep in now. How many fights in the UFC? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is going to be his 8th fight in the UFC, right? And I hear it. Everyone's saying, oh, but he's Ben Askren's son and he's funny and he's this and he's a kid and he can grow and he can whatever. Yeah, so could Sage Northcutt. And then he got his face smashed in by Cosmo Alexandre, right? And now in his first fight back in one, he gets dropped by a jab and finds a Hail Mary heel hook. Like, I think there needs to be a better duty of care to the young athletes that make their way into the UFC. It feels to me as though when he wins against Daniel Tamer, and like, that's a good win. Daniel Tamer's a decent enough kickboxing.
It is.
Managed to get him down, ground and pound, whatever, fine. When we see that against Alex Caceres and he just gets mauled from pillar to post, there has to be some conversations about, is this guy ready? Can we send him to an LFA, or can we send him to a CFFC, or can we send him to a you name it, whatever it is, Fury, whatever it is, send him back to Titan and allow him to build.
You said that the duty is on the UFC to protect these fighters, and that duty comes with not signing them up and putting them in this position in the first place. It's allowing them to develop on the regional scene. And, it's so hard to develop as a fighter, number one, but then doing it under the microscope of the UFC and all the criticisms that come around it as well. I think it's a very unfair situation for Chase Hooper to be in. And here we are again. We'll see. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more on the breakdown next Tuesday as well. But, it's I'm not looking forward. Like, I just don't want to see him taking too much damage too. And like, it's easy for me to sit back and say this like that, but like, I'm thinking to myself, what's the point here? What's the end goal here? Because if it's to get Chase Hooper and like, a win may come here, but then, you're going to have a tougher challenge next, because that's the way the UFC kind of structure is. So interesting to see, but
my only saving grace for this fight is Nick Fiore is the grappling coach for the New York Cartel, or whatever they're called. There's something Cartel. I can't remember. It's Tyson Chardier's team anyway. He's the grappling coach there, and so I think we could see one of two things. Right, we could see both of these fellas be like, look, neither of us are great strikers. Like, how about we just do a bit of grappling and see which one is the better grappler? Or we might see some horrendous, neither of them can get each other down, and they just decide to strike and it's poor and both take damage and whatever.
And like, again, even with Nick Fury, I like, even though he did lose his debut against Rebecca, I from what I seen in those spells in that fight, I would say that he's way better equipped than Chase Hooper on the feet, who has been just absolutely awful, really. He just doesn't really have any timing or technique or speed or anything. Everything for Chase Hooper just seems labored on the feet. But like I said, I mean, the UFC, they're giving him the best chance to try and get a win here. But I don't know, man. This fight could very well play out on the feet, and we'll see. But ultimately, it's going to end up in Chase Hooper, win or lose, taking more damage, and maybe more damage than he needs to take. And I don't know. Any other thoughts? No? Any other thoughts on this? Shall we move on? Because I'm actually excited about the next fight, because I'm excited to see Natalia Silva get back in there, who is, in my opinion, at 26 years of age, definitely somebody to look out for in the talent-rich 125-pound division in the UFC. After her last performance, and she's had a very successful UFC start. Winning against Jasmine Jadavicius by unanimous decision, and that wonderful spinning back kick knockout against Terza Bleda in her last fight as well. That was a stand-up and be counted performance by Natalia Silva, coming in here against Victoria Leonardo, who did pick up a unanimous decision win against Mandy Bohm in her last fight. I'm excited to see Natalia Silva in there too. I think the performance warranted maybe a position a little bit higher up in the card, but and I'm not going to die on that hill or that opinion. I'm just excited to see her back in there, because she is a very exciting prospect coming through in what is a very talent-rich 125-pound division, and women's 125-pound division now, Harry. Are you excited as myself to see her get in there and perform?
I suspect that this is a beatdown.
Me too.
I don't really rate Victoria Leonardo, but the spinning back kick from Natalia Silva against Terza Bleda was phenomenal. To go out and do what she did to Jasmine Jadavicius. Oh Jesus, I always absolutely butcher that lady's name. I apologize. Jasmine Jadavicius. I always bottle that name. I apologize. But yeah, two really, really big wins. Like Terza Bleda, the prospect coming in, she was called the next Ronda Rousey. She had the frame, she had the judo, she had the this, she had the that, and she just got destroyed, like absolutely destroyed. And the fight against Jasmine's a solid fighter, good fighter in that division. And again, runs through her as well. 26 years of age, very, very solid prospect, really interesting fight.
Indeed. Last but not least, Takeshi Sato takes on Themba Gorimbo at 170. And credit to them. It'll be interesting to see how that fight goes. We're not going to spend any time on it. If anything serious goes down, we will break it down on the breakdown show, the balance breakdown, each and every Tuesday. We'll be back. Check out the big podcast on Sunday. the lads will have a look at some of these fights and break down the rest of the action in mixed martial arts. We'll come in and take an analytical view on the balance breakdown of all of these fights next Tuesday. That is all from us. Follow Harry Powell at BJJ_Harry Powell on all social media platforms. Check out Speaker's Corner. Couple of excellent episodes on tap the last couple of weeks. But it's always good on Speaker's Corner. You can get that on SevereMMA Patreon. Check out the L Triangle. Check out anything else that I've got going on. The preview show, the breakdown, and the L Triangle. That's about it. We'll do a little bit of chase and pack and other stuff on the Patreon account as well. Hope everybody enjoys the fights this weekend. Like I said, we'll see you next Tuesday. Take care, enjoy the fights, and have a wonderful weekend, everybody. We'll see you again soon.